The air within Elias Thorne's sprawling mansion hung thick with the scent of old money and an even older solitude. He was a man carved from the granite of ambition and isolated by the very wealth he had meticulously amassed. Elias, a titan in the world of finance, resided in a fortress of opulence, its gilded halls and echoing rooms serving more as a monument to his achievements than a home. His days were a rigid ballet of board meetings, market analyses, and terse phone calls, each movement precise, predictable, and devoid of genuine warmth. He moved through his own life like a ghost, an immensely wealthy phantom haunting the magnificent shell he inhabited. His only consistent companion, though he barely acknowledged her presence, was Maria. She was the meticulous, almost invisible housekeeper, a whisper of motion gliding through the mansion's vastness. Maria's existence in Elias's world was defined by quiet efficiency. Dust vanished, floors gleamed, and meals appeared as if by magic, all without a single word exchanged between them. She was a silent guardian of his domestic order, a shadow flitting between rooms, her dedication unwavering, her presence unnoticed. Her hands, though calloused from years of toil, moved with an almost ethereal grace, a stark contrast to the heavy burdens they carried outside these walls. For Maria, the mansion was not just a workplace. It was a sanctuary from the storm of her own hidden struggles, a place where she could earn the meager wages that kept her family afloat, even as her own spirit often felt adrift. A storm was brewing, not within Elias's personal life, which remained predictably barren, but in his professional empire. A high-stakes business dinner loomed, a linchpin event crucial for the very survival of his company. Competitors circled like vultures, and a single misstep could send his meticulously built empire crumbling. Elias had prepared for weeks, every detail scrutinized, every potential outcome analyzed. His usual assistant, a sharp, indispensable woman named Eleanor, was meant to be his co-pilot, navigating the treacherous social currents of corporate diplomacy. Then, disaster struck. A call came, curt and apologetic. Eleanor had been hospitalized with a sudden, severe illness. She was out of commission indefinitely. Elias slammed the phone down, the sound echoing through his cavernous office. Panic, a rare and unwelcome visitor, clawed at his throat. He paced, his mind racing, dissecting every possibility, every contact, every potential stand-in. No one else possessed Eleanor's intimate knowledge of the deal, her social finesse, or her unwavering discretion. The clock was ticking, the dinner was mere hours away. And Elias, for the first time in a long time, felt genuinely helpless. His eyes, usually fixed on spreadsheets or distant horizons, fell upon Maria, who was silently polishing a silver statuette in the corner of his study. She paused, sensing his gaze, her hand freezing mid-stroke. Elias stared at her, a desperate, almost ludicrous thought taking root in his mind. It was an act of pure desperation, a gamble born of absolute necessity, and it tasted like bitter ash in his mouth. "Maria!" he said, his voice unusually strained, cutting through the accustomed silence. She looked up, her expression a mixture of surprise and apprehension. "I need you to come to a business dinner with me tonight." Maria's immediate reaction was a jolt of pure shock, followed by a wave of disbelief. Her hand instinctively flew to her apron, a gesture of ingrained service. Her mind reeled. A business dinner? With him? She, Maria, the invisible housekeeper, at a formal corporate event? The very notion was preposterous, insulting even, yet the desperate edge in his tone was unmistakable. She fumbled for words, her quiet nature making speech difficult under such an unexpected spotlight. "Sir? I don't understand." Elias, impatient and already regretting the words, pressed on. "Eleanor is ill. I need a companion, someone to fill a seat. You will attend as my guest." The words felt foreign on his tongue, an awkward marriage of formality and utter absurdity. He watched her face, a canvas of bewildered emotions, and a fresh wave of frustration washed over him. This was not Eleanor, poised and polished. This was Maria, whose world was defined by brooms and dustcloths, not champagne flutes and power plays. The unspoken tension in the room thickened, a palpable weight between them. Maria's initial shock gave way to a deeply ingrained reluctance, a silent protest against the social awkwardness, the sheer impropriety of the request. She was a housekeeper, not an accessory. Yet the desperation in Elias's eyes was undeniable. The challenge was immense, almost insurmountable, to transform Maria from the unseen hand of domesticity into a presentable, albeit silent, business associate in a matter of hours. Elias knew it was a long shot, a desperate throw of the dice, but with Eleanor gone, it was the only shot he had left. Maria's internal world, usually a sanctuary of quiet routine, erupted into a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. Fear, sharp and cold, warred with a desperate, burgeoning hope. The sheer audacity of Elias's request had initially paralyzed her, but as his impatient words hung in the air, another, more compelling thought began to surface. The extra pay. Her family. The image of her children, their thin clothes, the constant worry etched onto her husband's face, flashed before her eyes. This was not a social outing, nor a personal favor. This was an opportunity, however bizarre, to alleviate their crushing financial burden, even if just for a fleeting moment. A secret she meticulously guarded, the true extent of their destitution suddenly weighed heavier than any social discomfort. Elias, oblivious to the silent battle raging within her, saw only her hesitation, interpreting it as a reflection of her perceived social inadequacy. His dismissive attitude towards her social standing was implicit in his tone, a subtle condescension that stung, yet Maria swallowed it, her gaze fixed on the potential reward. The hurried preparations that followed felt surreal, a whirlwind of borrowed finery and clipped instructions. Elias, still visibly frustrated by the entire situation, had dispatched his personal assistant, a young man named Thomas, to procure a suitable dress. It was a simple, elegant black gown, a stark contrast to Maria's usual practical attire, and it hung somewhat awkwardly on her frame. Thomas, clearly uncomfortable with his unusual assignment, then attempted a series of quick etiquette lessons, a clumsy attempt to impart the complex nuances of high society into Maria's quiet world. He spoke of fork placement, appropriate conversational topics, and the art of a subtle nod, while Maria absorbed it all with a quiet intensity that belied her humble origins. She was a keen observer, a skill honed by years of meticulously maintaining the lives of others, noticing the subtle shifts in their moods, the unspoken cues in their interactions. This hidden intelligence, usually applied to anticipating Elias's needs before he voiced them, now focused on understanding this alien environment she was about to enter. Elias, meanwhile, paced his study, his frustration a palpable presence in the air. He viewed Maria as a mere pawn, a necessary but inconvenient substitute. His underlying prejudice was evident in every sharp glance, every exasperated sigh. This entire charade was an embarrassment, a potential catastrophe that could jeopardize the deal of a lifetime. He imagined the snickers, the knowing glances, the thinly veiled disdain from his peers. The thought made his jaw clench. He had no illusions about Maria's ability to contribute meaningfully to the business discussions. Her role was purely ornamental, a warm body in an empty seat. Yet Maria, despite the discomfort and Elias's thinly veiled contempt, harbored a quiet determination. She would not embarrass herself, nor, crucially, would she embarrass Elias. Her integrity, her simple dignity, was all she truly possessed, and she clung to it fiercely. As the hour for departure approached, a brief, almost imperceptible moment of shared humanity flickered between them. Elias, seeing Maria struggling with a clasp on the unfamiliar dress, offered a hesitant, almost awkward hand. His fingers, usually accustomed to signing multi-million-dollar contracts, fumbled slightly with the delicate mechanism. Their eyes met for a fleeting second, a silent acknowledgement of the strange, unprecedented circumstances that had brought them to this point. It was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by Elias's usual aloofness, but Maria registered it, a tiny spark of something undefinable in the vast, cold space of his mansion. The journey to the dinner was a silent one, the luxurious car gliding through the city streets, a world apart from Maria's usual bus routes and crowded sidewalks. The cityscape, usually a distant blur from her small window, now unfurled before her in a dazzling array of lights and towering buildings. She watched it all, a silent observer on the precipice of a world she had only ever glimpsed from afar. Her heart pounded a steady rhythm beneath the borrowed silk, a mixture of trepidation and a strange, unfamiliar excitement. She was no longer just Maria, the housekeeper. Tonight, for better or worse, she was Elias Thorne's guest, stepping into a reality that felt like a dream, or perhaps a nightmare waiting to unfold. The weight of her family's hopes, unspoken but ever present, felt heavy on her shoulders, propelling her forward into the unknown. The opulent ballroom of the Grand Regent Hotel shimmered under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, a meticulously orchestrated symphony of hushed conversations, clinking silverware, and the subtle scent of expensive perfumes. Maria stepped inside, the sheer grandeur of the setting momentarily stealing her breath. It was a world she had only imagined, a vibrant tapestry woven from wealth and influence, far removed from the quiet solitude of Elias Thorne's mansion. Elias, ever the imposing figure, strode confidently beside her, his presence a stark contrast to her own quiet apprehension. He offered a curt, almost imperceptible nod to the maître d', who smoothly guided them towards a large circular table already occupied by several formidable-looking individuals. These were the key players, the titans of industry, whose decisions shaped markets and fortunes. Maria recognized some faces from business magazines Elias occasionally left lying around, their expressions ranging from polite curiosity to thinly veiled suspicion as their gazes settled upon her. Among them, however, one figure stood out with an almost predatory air, Mr. Sterling. His smile, though outwardly cordial, held a sharp, calculating edge that made Maria instinctively recoil. He was Elias's main antagonist, a cunning rival whose ambition was rumored to be as boundless as his ruthlessness. Sterling's eyes, a piercing shade of blue, lingered on Maria for a fraction longer than necessary, a silent assessment that felt both dismissive and probing. Initial condescending glances and whispers followed Maria like shadows. She could almost hear the unspoken questions. Who is she? Why is she here? Elias, sensing the undercurrents, made a strained attempt to present Maria as a legitimate guest, introducing her with a brevity that bordered on brusqueness. "This is Maria," he stated, offering no further explanation, no title, no context. The lack of detail only fueled the speculation, and Maria felt the weight of their judgment pressing down on her. She struggled to blend in, to appear composed amidst the corporate jargon that swirled around her like an alien language. Phrases like market capitalization, synergy, and leveraged buyouts flew across the table, each word a reminder of her outsider status. She focused on Elias, trying to anticipate his needs, to follow the flow of conversation, to simply exist without drawing undue attention. The evening progressed, a delicate dance of power plays and veiled threats. Elias engaged in a tense negotiation with Mr. Sterling and another potential partner, their voices low, their expressions carefully guarded. Maria, though feeling like a mere prop, kept her ears open, absorbing the cadence of their words, the subtle shifts in tone. She had always been a good listener, a skill that now served her unexpectedly well. It was during a particularly intense exchange about supply chain logistics and a proposed merger that a crucial detail about the deal was subtly revealed by Sterling. He spoke of a contingency clause and a secondary supplier, mentioning a specific region known for its volatile political climate. The words themselves weren't alarming, but the casual, almost throwaway manner in which Sterling dropped them, coupled with a quick, nervous glance he cast at one of his associates, sparked a flicker of unease in Maria. Elias, engrossed in the intricate ballet of his own negotiations, missed the subtle hint entirely. He was focused on the bigger picture, on the numbers and the strategic advantages. But Maria, with her sharp ear and keen observational skills, picked up on a discrepancy. The way Sterling emphasized the secondary supplier, almost too nonchalantly, felt wrong. It was a detail that didn't quite fit the seamless narrative he was weaving, a loose thread in an otherwise perfectly tailored argument. It was a fleeting moment, easily dismissed by anyone not paying close attention. But Maria's instincts, honed by years of noticing minute imperfections in a seemingly flawless domestic order, screamed at her. The first seed of suspicion, tiny but insistent, was planted in Maria's mind. She felt a prickle of alarm, a premonition that something was amiss, a discordant note in the otherwise harmonious hum of the dinner. The weight of her family's hopes, which had propelled her into this strange world, now mingled with a growing sense of foreboding, urging her to pay closer attention to the shadows lurking beneath the polished surface. Maria, her heart now a frantic drum against her ribs, found her gaze repeatedly drawn to Sterling. He moved with a practiced ease, a predator in a tailored suit, yet a subtle tension hummed beneath his polished exterior. She watched him engage in hushed conversations, his head often tilted conspiratorially towards a man she recognized as one of his top executives, Mr. Davies. Their exchanges were brief, punctuated by furtive glances in Elias's direction, and a chilling smile that never quite reached Sterling's eyes. Maria, her senses heightened by the earlier discrepancy, began to piece together fragments of their whispered words, catching snippets that, when combined, painted a disturbing picture. She overheard phrases like diversionary tactic, market manipulation, and preemptive strike. The words themselves were abstract, but the malevolent intent behind them was palpable. A chill snaked down Maria's spine as the pieces clicked into place. Sterling wasn't just a tough negotiator, he was actively plotting to undermine Elias's deal, to sabotage his company. The secondary supplier he had so casually mentioned was not a contingency, but a weapon, designed to destabilize the very foundation of Elias's enterprise. It was industrial espionage, executed with a chilling precision, and Maria, the invisible housekeeper, was witnessing it unfold in real time. A wave of internal panic washed over her. Her mind raced, grappling with the enormity of what she was observing. Should she speak up? The thought was terrifying. Elias had barely acknowledged her presence, treating her as little more than a decorative accessory. What if she intervened, only to be dismissed as an overzealous, ignorant servant? The humiliation would be unbearable, and the potential damage to Elias's reputation, if her claims were unfounded or misinterpreted, could be immense. The fear of being ridiculed, of having her quiet observations brushed aside, was a heavy burden. Yet beneath the fear, a deeper emotion stirred, a fierce, almost primal loyalty to Elias. Despite his coldness, his dismissive attitude, he was her employer, her pathway to the desperately needed extra funds for her family. More than that, a strange sense of duty had taken root within her. She was here as his guest, however reluctantly, and that implied a responsibility. As she wrestled with her conscience, her eyes met Sterling's across the opulent room. It was a fleeting connection, less than a second, yet it felt like an eternity. A flicker of something unreadable passed through his gaze. Surprise, perhaps, quickly replaced by a chilling awareness. He hadn't seen her as a threat before, merely a background figure. But now, something in her intense scrutiny must have registered. A subtle, almost imperceptible shift in his posture communicated a clear message. You see too much. It was a warning without words, a silent threat that spoke volumes. The smile he offered her then was devoid of warmth, a predatory baring of teeth that sent a shiver down her spine. Maria instinctively looked away, her heart hammering against her ribs. But the message had been received loud and clear. The weight of the secret pressing down on her became almost unbearable. She was trapped in a gilded cage, privy to a betrayal that could ruin Elias, yet paralyzed by her fear of speaking out. Every hushed conversation between Sterling and his associate, every fleeting glance, solidified her growing conviction that a betrayal was not just imminent, but meticulously planned. The air around her seemed to thicken with deceit, and Maria felt a profound sense of helplessness. She was an uninvited witness to a corporate assassination, and her only weapon was a silent, unheeded warning. The champagne in her glass suddenly tasted bitter, and the opulent surroundings felt suffocating. She needed to act. But how? How could an invisible housekeeper possibly alert a millionaire to the sophisticated machinations of a ruthless rival without sounding like a delusional fool? The answer eluded her, yet the urgency of the situation burned within her, a silent scream begging for release. The evening, which had begun as an awkward social experiment, had transformed into a perilous tightrope walk, and Maria was acutely aware that one wrong step could send Elias, and by extension her own fragile hopes, plummeting into an abyss. Maria, her heart still thrumming from Sterling's menacing gaze, knew she could no longer remain silent. The urgency of the situation was a cold, sharp blade against her conscience. She had to warn Elias, but how? He was deep in conversation with a potential investor, his face a mask of intense concentration, oblivious to the viper circling nearby. She tried to catch his eye, a subtle nod, a slight shift in her posture, anything to signal distress. But Elias was an island unto himself, his focus unwavering from the intricate dance of high finance. Each attempt was met with the same result, a fleeting, dismissive glance, a micro-expression of annoyance at her perceived interruption before his attention snapped back to the more important matters at hand. His coldness, usually a distant hum in the background of her daily life, now felt like a concrete wall, impenetrable and frustratingly solid. Desperation gnawed at her. Time was slipping away, and with every passing minute, Sterling's insidious plan drew closer to fruition. She couldn't shout, couldn't make a scene. Such an act would only confirm Elias's low opinion of her and further jeopardize his deal. Her mind raced, searching for a solution, a subtle conduit for her message. Her eyes scanned the table, settling on a small, elegantly folded napkin beside Elias's untouched water glass. An idea, fragile yet potent, sparked within her. With a practiced, almost invisible movement, honed from years of meticulous service, she reached for her own napkin, pretending to dab her lips. Under the cover of this innocent gesture, her fingers deftly found a pen tucked into her small, borrowed clutch. In a swift, almost imperceptible motion, she scribbled a few urgent words onto the corner of the napkin she held, folding it tightly. Now came the delicate part, delivering the message without drawing undue attention. She waited for a lull in the conversation, a moment when Elias shifted slightly, reaching for his wineglass. As if by accident, her hand brushed against his arm, and in that fleeting contact she slipped the folded napkin into his palm. Her eyes met his for a fraction of a second, pleading, urgent. A silent scream resonating in their depths. Elias, surprised by the unexpected touch, glanced down at the small piece of paper in his hand. His brow furrowed slightly, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. He was in the middle of a crucial negotiation. Such distractions were unwelcome. He was about to dismiss it, perhaps even crumple it and toss it aside, when he caught the intensity in Maria's eyes once more. There was something beyond mere clumsiness in her gaze, an almost frantic desperation that pricked his hardened facade. His initial annoyance began to wane, replaced by a grudging curiosity. He subtly unfolded the napkin beneath the table, his eyes quickly scanning the hastily scrawled words. Sterling! Data leak. Counteroffer. Traitor. The words were stark, fragmented, yet their meaning hit him with the force of a physical blow. His head snapped up, his gaze darting across the room to Sterling, who was now smiling smugly at another associate. A cold knot formed in Elias's stomach. He looked back at Maria, his expression now a complex mix of disbelief and dawning suspicion. He leaned closer, pretending to adjust his tie, and whispered, "What is this, Maria? What are you talking about?" Maria, her voice barely a whisper, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, quickly explained what she had overheard. "Mr. Thorne, Sterling, he knows your numbers. He's planning to undercut your deal with a lower offer, using information he shouldn't have. He's been talking about a leak, a mole, inside your company." Her words tumbled out, breathless and urgent, laced with a conviction that Elias found unsettling. He listened, his mind racing, trying to reconcile the image of his quiet housekeeper with the gravity of her accusation. Industrial espionage? A mole in his own company? The idea was preposterous, yet the fear in Maria's eyes, The unwavering certainty in her hushed tone chipped away at his ingrained skepticism. His initial reaction was a surge of anger, directed not at Sterling, but at Maria. How dare she make such wild, unfounded claims? This was a high-stakes business dinner, not a playground for gossip. Was she mistaken? Was she simply overwhelmed by the unfamiliar environment, imagining things? Yet, a cold, logical part of his brain began to sift through her words. Sterling had been unusually confident, almost arrogant, throughout the evening. And the subtle hints Maria mentioned, the fragments she'd overheard, they resonated with an unsettling truth. Elias had always prided himself on his intuition, his ability to read people, but now he was faced with an impossible dilemma. Does he trust his housekeeper, a woman he barely knew, whom he had brought here out of last-minute desperation over his own seasoned business instincts? Does he risk looking foolish, or worse, paranoid, by acting on her seemingly outlandish claim? The decision hung heavy in the air, a critical crossroad that would define not only the outcome of this deal, but perhaps the very future of his company. The elegant dinner, once a stage for strategic negotiation, had transformed into a crucible, and Elias Thorne found himself standing at its fiery heart, forced to choose between doubt and an unsettling yet compelling truth. Elias Thorne found himself at a precipice, the weight of Maria's whispered revelations pressing down on him like a physical force. His company's future, potentially his entire legacy, hinged on a snap decision based on the unproven claim of a woman he had, until this very evening, considered little more than a piece of furniture in his opulent mansion. The absurdity of it all was almost comical, yet the cold dread coiling in his gut was undeniably real. He glanced at Sterling, who, from across the table, met his gaze with a chillingly confident smirk, a silent challenge that seemed to mock Elias's uncertainty. It was then that a flicker of intuition, honed over decades of cutthroat business dealings, ignited within him. Maria's fear, her utter conviction, wasn't born of delusion. He subtly shifted his negotiation strategy, a calculated risk that would either expose Sterling's treachery or confirm Maria's potential misjudgment. Instead of directly addressing the proposed deal, Elias began to pivot, introducing a hypothetical scenario, a contingency plan for a sudden, unforeseen market fluctuation that would require an immediate, significant alteration to the terms of their proposed partnership. He spoke calmly, his voice betraying none of the internal turmoil churning within him, carefully weaving in details that mirrored the information Maria had provided. He watched Sterling intently, searching for any tell, any crack in the facade. Sterling's reaction was immediate and telling. A subtle stiffening of his shoulders, a fleeting widening of his eyes, a micro-expression of surprise that vanished almost instantly, replaced by a forced smile. He cleared his throat, his usual smooth demeanor momentarily faltering. He attempted to counter Elias's hypothetical, but his arguments felt hollow, his usual incisive logic replaced by a vague defensiveness. It was enough. That fleeting moment of unguarded reaction confirmed Maria's suspicions with chilling clarity. Elias felt a jolt of shock, then a surge of cold fury. The betrayal was real. The audacity of it, the calculated malice behind Sterling's smug grin, ignited a fire within him. The tension in the room, though imperceptible to most, escalated for Elias and Maria. The air crackled with unspoken accusations. Elias, his voice now sharper, more commanding, turned his full attention to Sterling. "Mr. Sterling," he began, his tone deceptively mild. "It seems you've been rather busy making your own contingency plans for this deal. Perhaps you'd care to elaborate on the source of your rather specific insights into my company's internal projections." Sterling's composure finally began to crack. His face paled slightly, but he quickly recovered, his eyes narrowing in a predatory glare. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Thorne," he sneered, attempting to deflect. "My insights are a result of diligent market research, unlike some who rely on uninformed opinions." His gaze flickered pointedly at Maria, a clear attempt to discredit her and dismiss her as irrelevant. Maria, against all odds, did not flinch. She met Sterling's venomous stare with a quiet, unwavering resolve. She had risked everything to speak out, and she would not be silenced now. Her assertion, though unspoken, was palpable. She knew what she knew. Her silent defiance seemed to fuel Elias's resolve. A surprising display of trust, a public defense of Maria, emanated from Elias. "Mr. Sterling," he stated, his voice resonating with newfound authority, "Ms. Costa, my associate, has proven herself to be exceptionally observant and trustworthy. Far more so, it would seem, than certain individuals who believe they can manipulate situations through unethical means." The subtle shift in his address, elevating Maria to Ms. Costa and associate, was not lost on anyone at the table. It was a clear declaration of allegiance, a stark repudiation of Sterling's attempt to diminish her. The deal, which moments ago seemed within Elias's grasp, now hung precariously in the balance. The elegant business dinner had transformed into a high-stakes poker game, a battle of wits and integrity playing out under the glittering chandeliers. Other attendees, sensing the sudden shift in atmosphere, exchanged uneasy glances. The clinking of silverware became more pronounced in the sudden, strained silence. Elias, guided by Maria's courage and his own rekindled instincts, was gambling everything. He was betting not just on the validity of her information, but on the profound, unexpected truth that sometimes the most unassuming voices hold the most vital truths. The quiet housekeeper, once an afterthought, had become the linchpin, and the future of Thorn Industries now rested squarely on her steadfast assertion and Elias's desperate gamble to believe her. Elias, his gaze fixed on Sterling, now moved with a deliberate, almost predatory calm. The subtle cues Maria had provided, the fragments of overheard conversations and Sterling's telling reactions had coalesced into a damning picture. He knew exactly what he needed to do. With a quiet command that cut through the lingering tension, Elias motioned to his legal counsel, who had been observing the exchange with growing disquiet. "Mr. Davies, would you be so kind as to retrieve the revised projections from the secure server, specifically those dated last Tuesday?" Sterling's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. A bead of sweat traced a path down his temple. The revised projections were the very documents he had tried to acquire through illicit means. Believing they contained vulnerabilities he could exploit, he had been so confident in his stolen information that he hadn't anticipated Elias would have more current, refined data, or that Maria would have caught wind of his earlier scheme. The trap was sprung. As Mr. Davies, a shrewd man in his own right, swiftly moved to fulfill the request, Elias continued, his voice devoid of emotion, yet laced with an undeniable authority. "It appears, Mr. Sterling, that your diligent market research was based on outdated and frankly compromised information. We've been aware of certain irregularities in the data circulating, and thanks to Ms. Costa's keen observations, we were able to identify the source of the leak and implement countermeasures well in advance." He paused, allowing the implication to sink in, the silence in the room growing heavier with each passing second. Sterling's carefully constructed facade began to crack, not with a sudden break, but with a slow, agonizing disintegration. His face, once a mask of arrogant confidence, now contorted with a mixture of disbelief and panic. He stammered, attempting to formulate a denial, but the words caught in his throat. The carefully laid plot, designed to cripple Elias Thorn and elevate his own company, was unraveling before his very eyes, exposed by the most unlikely of figures. When Mr. Davies returned, a tablet in hand, Elias took it, rotating the screen to display a complex set of financial figures and proprietary algorithms. "These, gentlemen," Elias announced, his voice now resonating with cold triumph, "are the actual projections, incorporating several innovative strategies that render any previous data entirely obsolete. Strategies, I might add, that were implemented precisely because we anticipated attempts to exploit our intellectual property." He then displayed a side-by-side comparison, highlighting discrepancies that could only have arisen from Sterling attempting to manipulate outdated figures into a coherent but ultimately false narrative. The evidence, meticulously gathered and now presented, was irrefutable. A collective gasp rippled through the room. The other attendees, rivals and potential partners alike, stared at Sterling with a mixture of shock and disgust. Industrial espionage was a grave offense, a betrayal of trust that could shatter careers and reputations. Sterling, caught red-handed, was now a pariah. His attempts to deflect, to accuse Maria of being a plant, to discredit Elias, all fell flat against the weight of the undeniable proof. He watched his carefully cultivated image collapse, his power dissolving into ignominy. The business deal, which had been hanging by a thread, was not just salvaged, it was strengthened. The revelation of Sterling's treachery and Elias's swift, decisive response demonstrated a level of foresight and security that impressed even the most cynical of the investors. The air of suspicion that had permeated the room dissipated, replaced by a renewed sense of confidence in Thorn Industries. Maria, who had stood silently by Elias's side throughout the confrontation, felt a wave of relief wash over her. Her quiet courage, her unwavering conviction, had not only saved Elias's company, but had also exposed a dishonest man. As the other guests began to distance themselves from the disgraced Sterling, Elias turned to Maria, a flicker of something akin to admiration in his eyes. It was a profound shift in his perception. No longer just his housekeeper, no longer merely a pawn in a desperate gambit, Maria had proven herself to be an invaluable ally, a person of integrity and sharp intellect. The cold, calculating businessman had seen a side of humanity he had long forgotten. Revealed through the quiet strength of a woman he had once dismissed, the immediate aftermath was a complex tapestry of emotions. Relief for Elias, who had narrowly averted a catastrophic corporate disaster. Lingering tension for the other attendees, who were grappling with the implications of Sterling's downfall. And for Maria, a quiet sense of accomplishment mixed with an overwhelming exhaustion. She had navigated a world utterly alien to her, faced down a powerful and ruthless man, and emerged victorious. The unexpected victory was not just a testament to her quick thinking, but to her inherent goodness, her refusal to stand by while injustice unfolded. The evening, which had begun with dread, concluded with the surprising triumph of truth, all thanks to the courage of an unassuming housekeeper. The drive back to Elias Thorne's sprawling mansion was enveloped in a peculiar silence, heavy with unspoken sentiments and the lingering echoes of the evening's dramatic confrontation. Elias, usually a man of sharp, decisive movements, stared out at the night-shrouded cityscape, his mind replaying the events. He had witnessed Maria's unwavering conviction, her acute observation, and her quiet bravery. The carefully constructed edifice of his own prejudice, the unconscious bias that had reduced her to merely the housekeeper, was beginning to crumble. He had always prided himself on his ability to assess people, to see through facades, yet he had been utterly blind to the remarkable individual right under his nose. The realization was a bitter pill, chafing against his pride, yet simultaneously igniting a spark of something new within him. Beside him, Maria leaned against the plush leather seat, her eyes closed, the adrenaline that had propelled her through the evening now receding, leaving her utterly depleted. The emotional toll of navigating such an alien, high-stakes environment, of confronting a powerful man, and of holding her nerve under intense scrutiny, was immense. Her body ached with a fatigue that went beyond physical exertion. It was the weariness of a spirit pushed to its limits. She had done what she believed was right, but the cost had been significant. The thought of returning to her quiet, predictable routine felt both comforting and strangely inadequate after the intensity of the night. Finally, as the car glided through the ornate gates of the estate, Elias broke the profound silence. His voice, usually clipped and authoritative, held a tremor she hadn't heard before. "Maria," he began, the single word hanging in the air, weighted with meaning. He paused, gathering his thoughts, searching for the right words to articulate the seismic shift that had occurred within him. "I owe you an immense debt of gratitude. You saved my company tonight. More than that, you saved me from my own arrogance." He turned to face her, his gaze direct, devoid of the dismissiveness that had characterized their interactions before. "I misjudged you, profoundly. I saw only your position, not your capabilities, not your character. For that, I am truly sorry. His apology was heartfelt, stripped of the usual corporate veneer, a raw admission from a man unaccustomed to such vulnerability. Maria opened her eyes, meeting his gaze with a quiet dignity. She hadn't sought praise or grand gestures. Her motivation had been simpler, driven by an innate sense of justice and a deep-seated, if unspoken, loyalty. "There is no need for apologies, Mr. Thorne," she replied softly, her voice raspy with exhaustion. "I merely did what anyone should do when they see wrongdoing." Her humility, in the face of such a monumental achievement, only deepened Elias's newfound respect. He realized then that her quiet strength wasn't a facade. It was an intrinsic part of her being. As the car pulled up to the grand entrance, Elias continued, a genuine curiosity replacing his earlier aloofness. "But why, Maria? Why risk so much for a man who treated you with such disregard?" His question was genuine, seeking to understand the wellspring of her courage. It was then, in the hushed confines of the car, that Maria for the first time spoke of her own struggles, her voice barely a whisper. She spoke of her children, of their aspirations, of the crushing weight of medical bills, and the constant anxiety of making ends meet. She revealed the desperate hope that the extra pay from this one evening might offer a sliver of relief, a chance for a better future for her family. Elias listened, truly listened, perhaps for the first time in his life, to the quiet desperation that underscored her existence. He saw the world through her eyes, a world far removed from his ivory tower of wealth and privilege. He understood her motivations, her unwavering commitment to her family, and the profound strength that sprang from that love. It was a revelation that transcended the business deal, touching something deeper within him. The wall of indifference he had built around himself, a defense against the world, began to crack. A newfound respect, born not of obligation but of genuine understanding, blossomed between them. It was a fragile, unexpected connection, forged in the crucible of crisis. Elias, the solitary millionaire, saw in Maria not just an employee, but a woman of immense resilience and moral fortitude. Maria, the invisible housekeeper, saw in Elias not just a demanding employer, but a man capable of humility and perhaps even genuine empathy. As they stepped out of the car, the cool night air a stark contrast to the heated emotions of the evening, Elias made a quiet, firm promise. "Maria," he said, his voice imbued with a new resolve, "your family will not struggle anymore. I will see to it." It was more than just a statement. It was a commitment, a pledge born of a profound shift in his own understanding of responsibility and human connection. The night had not only saved his company, it had begun the arduous, yet ultimately redemptive process of saving his soul. Elias Thorne was a man of his word, and his promise to Maria was not merely a fleeting sentiment born of gratitude. The very next morning, before the city had fully stirred, Elias's meticulously efficient legal team was already drafting documents. He presented Maria with an offer that stunned her into silence. Not only a substantial financial reward for her pivotal role in securing the deal, far exceeding any sum she had ever imagined, but also a new, respected position within his company. She was to be his personal executive assistant, a role that recognized her sharp intellect and keen observational skills, placing her directly at the heart of his operations, a far cry from the quiet anonymity of her previous duties. The title alone, Executive Assistant to the CEO, spoke volumes about the profound shift in her standing. But Elias's commitment extended beyond Maria herself. True to his pledge, he leveraged his considerable influence and resources to secure better opportunities for her family. Her children, who had once faced an uncertain educational future, were enrolled in prestigious schools, their tuition and expenses fully covered. Her ailing mother received the best medical care available, her financial burdens lifted entirely. Maria's siblings, who had struggled in low-paying jobs, found themselves presented with legitimate, well-paying positions within Elias's expansive network, their skills finally recognized and nurtured. The weight that had pressed down on Maria for so long, the constant anxiety of scarcity, dissolved almost overnight, replaced by an unfamiliar lightness, a profound sense of relief and hope. Her life, once a relentless cycle of toil and worry, took a dramatic, almost miraculous turn for the better. Witnessing Maria's quiet joy and the tangible positive impact of his actions ignited something within Elias that had long lain dormant. He began to reevaluate his own life, the solitary pursuit of wealth suddenly seeming hollow and incomplete. The walls of his self-imposed isolation, once impenetrable, now felt porous, allowing the warmth of genuine human connection to seep in. He became less reclusive, venturing out of his opulent mansion not just for business, but for engagements that had once seemed trivial or beneath him. He started attending charity galas, not as a mere donor, but as an engaged participant, listening to the stories of those less fortunate, their struggles echoing Maria's past. His company, once a cold, profit-driven machine, began to incorporate ethical practices and community outreach programs, reflecting Elias's burgeoning social conscience. Maria, now Elias's trusted confidant, proved to be an invaluable asset in his professional life. Her unique perspective, grounded in practical experience and an innate understanding of human nature, often provided insights that his corporate advisors, steeped in abstract theories, missed entirely. She attended high-level meetings by his side, her quiet intelligence commanding respect, her presence a constant reminder of the human element in every business decision. Their professional relationship, initially born of crisis and necessity, deepened into a true and unwavering friendship. They shared late-night brainstorming sessions, discussing not just market trends, but also the complexities of human motivation and the ethics of leadership. Elias found himself confiding in Maria, sharing his doubts and aspirations, something he had never done with anyone before. Inspired by Maria's unwavering integrity and her dedication to others, Elias found a new purpose beyond the relentless accumulation of wealth. He embraced philanthropy with a fervor that surprised even himself, establishing foundations dedicated to education and healthcare for underserved communities, often consulting Maria on the most impactful ways to allocate funds. He sought to create a legacy not just of financial success, but of positive societal change. Maria's quiet strength continued to inspire Elias, her unwavering moral compass guiding his burgeoning philanthropic endeavors. She reminded him that true wealth lay in the ability to enrich lives, not just bank accounts. The mansion, once a magnificent but cold and lonely monument to Elias's isolation, began to transform. Maria's presence and the subtle changes Elias underwent infused it with a newfound warmth. Laughter, once a rare and fleeting sound within its walls, now echoed more frequently, particularly when Maria's children visited, their joyful energy breathing life into every corner. The staff, who had once moved about with hushed reverence, now felt a sense of camaraderie, fostered by Elias's more approachable demeanor and Maria's kind leadership. The grand halls, once filled with the ghosts of Elias's past, now resonated with the vibrant promise of a shared future, a testament to the profound impact one extraordinary housekeeper had on the life of an equally extraordinary, though initially flawed, millionaire. A year had passed since that fateful business dinner, a year that had reshaped the lives of both Elias Thorne and Maria in profound and unexpected ways. The memory of the evening, with its sharp turns from impending disaster to triumphant vindication, still resonated with them, a constant, quiet reminder of the pivotal moment when their paths had irrevocably intertwined. For Maria, the past 12 months had been a whirlwind of transformation. Her family, once teetering on the precipice of financial ruin, was now thriving. Elias had not merely offered assistance, he had orchestrated a complete reversal of their fortunes. Her children, once denied opportunities due to circumstance, were now enrolled in excellent schools, their futures bright with possibility, their laughter and boundless energy filling the halls of their new, comfortable home. Maria often found herself pausing, a quiet smile gracing her lips as she watched them study or play, a profound sense of gratitude washing over her. Elias's company, once narrowly saved from Sterling's deceit, was now flourishing. It had not merely recovered, it had soared to new heights, built on a foundation of integrity and ethical practices that had become Elias's new guiding principles. The near catastrophe had purged the organization of its hidden weaknesses, forging it into a stronger, more resilient entity. He had meticulously reviewed all contracts, implemented stringent new security protocols, and fostered a culture of transparency that resonated through every department. The financial gains were substantial, but for Elias, the true measure of success now lay in the positive impact his company had on its employees and the broader community. Tonight, they found themselves once again at a high-profile business dinner, though the circumstances were dramatically different. This time, Maria was not a stand-in. A reluctant guest pressed into service. She attended as Elias's head of corporate communications and philanthropy, a position she had earned through sheer intellect, unwavering dedication, and a natural ability to connect with people. Her attire was no longer borrowed. It was impeccably chosen, reflecting her new status and quiet elegance. As they entered the opulent ballroom, the air, thick with the murmur of influential voices and the clinking of crystal, Maria carried herself with an understated confidence and poise that was palpable. The nervous tremor that had once accompanied her into such settings was entirely absent, replaced by a calm assurance. Elias, standing proudly beside her, felt a surge of admiration. He observed the subtle nods of recognition, the genuine smiles directed at Maria, a stark contrast to the condescending glances and whispered judgments of a year ago. Tonight, the whispers were of admiration, not condescension. People sought her out, eager to discuss the innovative philanthropic initiatives she spearheaded, her insights on ethical business practices, and her remarkable journey. Elias listened, a quiet pride swelling in his chest, as Maria eloquently articulated their company's vision and the tangible results of their community projects. He publicly acknowledged Maria's invaluable contribution, not just to his company's success, but to his own personal transformation, his words carrying a sincerity that resonated deeply with those present. He spoke of her courage, her intelligence, and her unwavering moral compass, attributes he now valued above all else. Then, across the crowded room, their eyes met with a figure slumped in a corner, nursing a drink, his face etched with bitterness and defeat. It was Sterling. The once cunning rival, now a shadow of his former self, ostracized from the business world after his treachery had become public knowledge. His empire had crumbled, his reputation shattered, leaving him with nothing but the echoes of his own avarice. He saw them, Elias and Maria, standing tall, respected, triumphant. A flicker of something, perhaps regret, perhaps envy, crossed his eyes before he quickly looked away, unable to meet their gaze. The brief, poignant encounter served as a powerful reminder of the past, a silent testament to the dramatic contrast between their circumstances then and now. Maria felt a pang of empathy, not for Sterling's downfall, but for the wasted potential, the destructive path he had chosen. Elias, however, felt only a confirmation of the justice served, a quiet vindication. He squeezed Maria's arm gently, a shared glance of understanding passing between them, a silent acknowledgement of the long road they had travelled. It was a look that encompassed gratitude for her unwavering loyalty and a deep appreciation for the profound impact she had made on his life. The glittering ballroom, once a battleground, now felt like a celebration of their shared journey, a testament to the power of integrity and the unexpected bonds forged in the crucible of adversity. They had not only survived, they had flourished together. Elias and Maria's relationship had long transcended the conventional boundaries of employer and employee, evolving into something far more profound and intricate. It was a partnership forged in crisis, tempered by shared triumphs, and solidified by an unspoken understanding that ran deeper than words. Maria, with her innate wisdom and unwavering moral compass, had become an indispensable guide for Elias, not just in business, but in the very fabric of his existence. She possessed an uncanny ability to distill complex ethical dilemmas into simple truths, often challenging his ingrained corporate cynicism with a quiet conviction that demanded his attention and respect. Elias, in turn, offered Maria a steadfast support system, a protective bulwark against any lingering shadows from her past struggles, and a platform where her talents and insights were not only valued, but actively sought. Their collaboration extended beyond the confines of the boardroom or the company's charitable initiatives. They would often spend evenings discussing global affairs, philosophical concepts, or the intricate challenges of human nature, their conversations flowing effortlessly between profound contemplation and light-hearted banter. Elias, once a man encased in a shell of self-imposed isolation, found himself opening up, sharing vulnerabilities he had never dared to reveal to anyone else. Maria listened with an empathetic ear, offering perspectives that were always insightful, never judgmental. She had a way of seeing the world through a lens of both pragmatism and compassion, a duality that fascinated and inspired Elias. One crisp autumn afternoon, they found themselves walking through a sprawling arboretum, the vibrant hues of changing leaves mirroring the transformation in their own lives. A gentle breeze rustled through the branches, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. Elias, typically absorbed in the intricacies of a new sustainable energy project, paused, his gaze drifting over a tranquil pond where swans glided gracefully. "You know, Maria," he began, his voice softer than usual. "Before you, my world was a meticulously constructed fortress. Efficient, yes, but utterly devoid of true connection. I confused success with fulfillment." He turned to her, a rare, genuine smile gracing his lips. "You dismantled that fortress, brick by painstaking brick, and replaced it with something far more resilient, far more beautiful." Maria returned his smile, a warmth radiating from her eyes. "It was not I who dismantled it, Elias. It was always within you to seek that connection. I merely held up a mirror, perhaps, or offered a different perspective on the blueprints." Her humility was as striking as her intelligence. She understood that Elias, despite his immense wealth and power, had been as trapped as anyone, perhaps more so, by the gilded cage of his own making. Their conversations were often punctuated by these moments of profound connection, where the unspoken understanding between them solidified into an almost familial affection. There was no romantic undertone, no societal expectations to complicate their bond. It was a pure, platonic love rooted in shared respect, admiration, and a deep appreciation for the unique strengths each brought to the other's life. Elias had become the older brother she never had, a mentor and protector, while Maria had become the wise sister, the steadfast friend who grounded him and reminded him of the values that truly mattered. They continued their walk, discussing the upcoming launch of a new educational program for disadvantaged youth, a project they had passionately championed together. Maria's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm as she outlined the curriculum, her passion for empowering others evident in every word. Elias watched her, a quiet contentment settling over him. He had once believed that wealth was the ultimate measure of a man, the sole arbiter of happiness. Now, he understood that true richness lay in the genuine connections forged, the positive impact made, and the profound joy of shared purpose. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long, golden shadows across the arboretum, they found a secluded bench overlooking the pond. Maria gestured towards the swans, their elegant forms reflected perfectly on the still water. "They glide with such grace," she mused, "but beneath the surface, their feet are constantly working, propelling them forward. It reminds me of life, Elias. The outward appearance of ease often belies the quiet effort and determination beneath." Elias nodded slowly, absorbing her words. "Indeed, and sometimes," he added, his gaze fixed on the water, "it takes someone else to point out the beauty of the glide, when you're too focused on the effort." He looked at her, his eyes filled with an affection that needed no words. The once cold millionaire, who had lived a life of isolated opulence, had found warmth, genuine connection, and a profound sense of belonging through the most unexpected of friendships. The housekeeper, once invisible, had not only found her voice and purpose, but had, in doing so, illuminated the path for a powerful man to discover his own. Their story was a testament to the powerful, often quiet impact one person could have on another's life, reshaping destinies in ways neither could have ever imagined. The foundation, aptly named the Thorn Silver Foundation for Empowerment, became a beacon of hope, a tangible manifestation of Elias's profound transformation. It was a testament to Maria's unwavering spirit, and Elias's newfound commitment to using his immense wealth for the greater good. The Foundation's primary mission was to support underprivileged families, echoing Maria's own past struggles and her fierce dedication to ensuring no child suffered the same disadvantages she had faced. Maria, now a respected leader within the Foundation, dedicated countless hours to its work, her empathetic approach and practical wisdom proving invaluable. She mentored young women from similar backgrounds, her personal journey from housekeeper to influential advocate serving as a powerful, living example of resilience and possibility. Her calm demeanor and sharp intellect, once confined to the meticulous order of Elias's mansion, now shaped policy and inspired change on a much larger scale. Their story, once a whispered curiosity, now resonated as an inspiration, a testament to integrity and the unexpected power of human connection. It was retold in boardrooms and community centers, a modern fable illustrating how true value lay not in accumulated wealth, but in character, compassion, and the courage to see beyond superficial differences. The enduring legacy of their unlikely partnership was etched into the lives they touched, a ripple effect spreading far beyond their immediate circles. Elias Thorne, once a reclusive millionaire, had evolved into a benevolent leader, his decisions guided by a moral compass sharpened by Maria's influence. His company, once solely focused on profit, now integrated ethical practices and social responsibility into its core values, attracting talent and clients who valued purpose as much as prosperity. Maria's journey, too, was a powerful narrative of transformation. From the quiet, almost invisible housekeeper, she had blossomed into an empowered woman, her voice amplified, her actions creating tangible impact. She moved with a quiet confidence that spoke volumes, her presence commanding respect without demanding it. She had not only secured a better life for her own family, but had become an architect of opportunity for countless others. Her children, thriving in the educational environment she had fought so hard to provide, often reminded her of the sacrifices made and the victories won. One crisp autumn afternoon, years after that fateful dinner, Elias and Maria stood together on the sprawling terrace of the Foundation's new headquarters, overlooking a bustling city park. Children laughed, leaves rustled in the gentle breeze, and the distant hum of urban life provided a soothing backdrop. Elias, his silver hair now a distinguished crown, leaned slightly on a cane, a testament to the passage of time, yet his eyes held a youthful spark. Maria, her face etched with wisdom and kindness, gestured towards a group of students engaged in an outdoor learning session, a program funded by their foundation. "Look at them, Elias," she said softly, a profound sense of fulfillment in her voice. "Each one a universe of potential, waiting to be discovered." Elias smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached his eyes. "And it all began with a desperate gamble, didn't it, Maria? A decision to trust the unexpected." He paused, turning to her. "I often wonder what path my life would have taken had you not been there that night. Had you not possessed the courage to speak truth to power, to see what I was blind to." Maria squeezed his arm gently. "And I, Elias, often wonder where I would be without your willingness to listen, to change, to build something greater than yourself." She looked out at the city, a vibrant tapestry of lives intersecting, striving, dreaming. "Our story, I believe, is a quiet reminder that the most profound changes often begin in the most unlikely of places, with the most unexpected of people." He nodded, a deep understanding passing between them. The message was clear, etched not just in the Foundation's gleaming walls, but in the very fabric of their shared lives. True value lay not in the accumulation of wealth or the fleeting recognition of status, but in the unwavering strength of character, the boundless capacity for compassion, and the courage to connect with another human being on a level that transcended all superficial barriers. It was the lasting impact of a single act of courage and trust, blooming into a legacy of change, a testament to the quiet power of redemption and the indomitable strength of the human spirit. The millionaire and his housekeeper, once worlds apart, had forged a bond that reshaped not only their own destinies, but also the lives of countless others, leaving an indelible mark on the world, a truly hopeful future.